Good afternoon, everyone. It's Dr. Gershon with another BetterHealth webinar. I am absolutely thrilled to be here today with two outstanding women leaders who are really leading an incredible company to reshape the standard of care for infection and control of infection, which is an incredibly costly problem, both on a patient personal level and on a healthcare economics level. But before I go into that, I want to thank everyone once again for being so supportive, signing up to the webinars and taking part on a regular basis is greatly appreciated. And I want to go over a little bit about what we've accomplished. Over the past year, we've had some real incredible luminaries, both from the investment side, like the CEO of Mass Challenge and managing directors of Techstars. We've had some outstanding companies like Capgemini, who's been a sponsor, Harvard Business School. We've had incredible groundbreaking emerging companies like Fluidform and Perceive. We've had amazing new entrepreneurs in drug discovery, drug development, medical devices, AI. All of this is for one purpose, really to improve patient outcomes. And so I want to take a moment to thank everyone and also to recognize that what we're doing here is bringing together in a rather unique form an open source platform for healthcare, a platform that recognizes that the complex problems that are within healthcare are best solved through collaborative partnerships. And those collaborative partnerships also emphasize the role that these women are playing, because diverse voices make better decisions. And those decisions will shape the next 10 to 20 years of all of our lives. What we're here today to talk about is something really outstanding in terms of the use of technology as a tool to improve the infection rate and control of infection in patients. This is a ubiquitous problem, a global problem, and one that we hope to talk about today with a potential solution for many of the problems that are impacting millions and millions of patients. I want to go over a little bit about the structure of what we're doing. Within the BetterHealth series, we do highlight emerging companies. We do highlight unicorns as case studies for the emerging companies. We highlight a CEO who is part of our diverse community. And we also talk about incredible macro events that are reshaping healthcare. Over the next several weeks, we will hear from people at Microsoft. We will hear from people at various pharmaceutical companies, bringing their voices in a big picture way about where things are going. We will hear about investors who are talking about leadership from Rock Health. And all of this comes together in one final point, which is how can we all pitch in together to share information, to share technology, and to advance healthcare as a platform for everyone. So within that context, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to Vicki Farrar, who is the CEO of Lightline Medical, and Kristin Taylor, who is the CFO of Lightline Medical, two women who are just really absolutely doing outstanding things. And I want to begin the conversation by asking Vicki, on the personal side, what is it like to be a CEO of an up-and-coming, prominent medical device, medical technology company? What are some of the things that you have experienced as an entrepreneur, and particularly as a woman entrepreneur? And how has that experience and your team brought the company to the successful stage it's in now?
Okay, I'm delighted to be here on the BetterHealth webinar. Being a woman entrepreneur is difficult, but I am an intellectual property lawyer turned entrepreneur with my mission to save lives, as it is Lightline Medical's and BetterHealth's. I think with my background as an attorney that I am taken a little more seriously than maybe some other women would be in this area. But I would say that when you initially approach somebody as a woman and a CEO of a medical device company, they don't necessarily take you seriously. So you really, really need to understand the field, have the facts and the vision. And here we have that. So we're using visible light to prevent infection. We're the only ones in the world doing that. There is no antibiotic resistance issue, which is why the whole world can't fix the infection control problem. And I think when people hear our story, even as women, that it is so novel and so good that they accept it. And that our mission to save lives is the same as Endeavor's and BetterHealth. So I think we've had a very good shot. And I might mention, it helps that we have 30 issued patents and 19 pending.
Fantastic. Well, we certainly are mission aligned. And that's one of the reasons that's so exciting for both of you to be here, because the focus of Endeavor and the BetterHealth is to find companies that are run by exciting leaders like yourself. Kristin, let me shift the conversation over to you. We're in an incredibly difficult macroeconomic time, whether in recession or, as I believe, in a more serious note, a liquidity crisis. That liquidity crisis, which is yet to be talked about, in my opinion, has long staying power. Whereas recessions come and go in 9 to 18 months, liquidity crises can last 10 plus years. How do you see this impacting the company? And what are some of the strategies that you can offer young entrepreneurs to kind of hunker down or deal with, in a team-oriented way, these macro problems?
Yeah, Martin, great question. And thanks for having both me and Vicki here today to join you. The question of liquidity, it is even more powerful than ever. I mean, as a startup, this has been a challenge, since the beginning, right? But with these markets, it's become even harder. I think as far as, how we navigate through, interesting, because as we see navigating through, this is where the power of the networks come. And as Vicki talked about, the power of being able to show our importance, our relevance. Because even though a lot of days it doesn't feel like there is liquidity out there, there is. There is money. It's just finding it. And so I think that that's where being scrappier than ever, being able to support both the building of the business along with the funding of the business has become even harder. And Vicki knows about that. That's a balance she lives every day. But back to the power of the network, that's where I think, under this heading of being female founder, female executive team, there's pros and cons, right? Vicki talked about some of our challenges, but there are also strong networks out there that are very supportive and believe in the value and the return on female founders and female entrepreneurs, and being able to get into those with this mission, which is such a great mission of, improving lives through innovative technologies, has been a really big boom for Lightline Medical.
That's such a great overview and such an important point, because really for us, it's critically important in following the train of thought about how important the C-suite is, that the C-suite does recognize the importance of communication, networking, partnership, and collaboration, even at early stages. And, I had the good fortune of being with this incredible group, Women in Biotech, last week to ring the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange. This is a testament to how they have taken this organization and made it a national organization with chapters all around the country, supported in part by another terrific company which has come out of a crisis, Silicon Valley Bank, who is doing really incredible things, particularly focusing in on emerging leaders in emerging companies. And so these are two parts of, the Endeavor and the BetterHealth network. And I certainly would encourage people, to reach out to both of these organizations as part of this overriding theme, which is how can companies survive and grow and scale and commercialize when there's a lot of headwinds that are statistically challenging? As we know, within the first 3 to 5 years, 80 to 90% of companies fail. So part of what we do at Endeavor Venture Studio is we make long-term contracts with companies to support them strategically and financially with checks of $100,000 to $500,000 for a total of $5 million up until they reach their Series B. We help syndicate deals, and this is part of a network collaborative effort that is not just looking at finance, but it's looking exactly as you talked about, Kristin. It's really looking about who are you working with? Who are your collaboration partners? And as part of that, I know that Vicki has an announcement to make about a new collaboration with a government agency.
Sure. So, it's very, very difficult. It's a hard decision to make. When do you go to FDA and when do you not to get their opinion on your product? And it's a debate that I've had with myself and my team literally for more than 5 years. When do we go? We went to FDA on July 31st, and the outcome was absolutely spectacular. Most importantly, they said, quote, no concerns about our predicate device that we need to show we're substantially equivalent to in order to get on the market. They approved or agreed with our microbiology plans and our human factors testing. And that's really important. That's when you literally interview patients and doctors and see, can they use your product? Do they understand it? Is it going to work? So that we have agreement on the number of patients and doctors we're going to talk to and what we're going to show them and what the criteria are for getting a positive response that FDA will agree to. So it's something we have to do for FDA. But anyway, that was a big deal for Lightline.
So congratulations. I wanted to kind of get that plug in for you because I know
Thank you.
This is hot off the press. But also I want to use this as an example. In my opinion, as a former FDA attorney and someone who has run a clinical research organization, so I do understand the makings of a good and a bad clinical trial. From my perspective, it's never too early to begin conversations with government agencies, regulatory bodies, strategic partners in industry. Now, I know many early stage companies feel that this potentially could put them at a disadvantage because they're too transparent, or they're giving away too much information, or they may create some type of spotlight which produces headwinds. My answer is, if there are going to be headwinds, there's going to be headwinds if you do it today or 6 months from now or a year from now. So, what we try to do is bring people like you, Vicki, to the table who are courageous. You take risk in a measured way. You're very thoughtful in your approach. And I would like both of you to talk about that as entrepreneurs, because one of the things that I see in entrepreneurs, particularly newer entrepreneurs, is the notion that they don't take enough risk, believe it or not. They're too afraid. They're too kind of close to the vest. And they're unwilling to share, their intellectual property. They're unwilling to talk about their story. I would like both of you, from a finance perspective, from a management perspective, from a C-suite perspective, to talk about risk. And I was going to use the word mitigated risk, but I would say balanced risk. So balanced risk for me is what's important. Knowing how to ski off a 30-foot jump, but recognizing that it's probably a good idea to look down below to make sure that the terrain hasn't changed from the last time you did it, is a mitigated risk. So can you talk about that? Because it's going to lead to a second kind of question, which is, how do you and your C-suite make decisions?
Okay, I'll start with that, because we made a very major decision for the company that we won't know if it was the right one or not. As I mentioned, we're using visible light to prevent infections. We're doing that delivery via a fiber optic in a catheter. Originally, our first product was going to be to prevent infections in the Foley or urinary catheter. And the reason for that is because it's the most common infection in the entire world, not just the United States. But I went to an entity that bought my last company and asked them for investment. And they asked me if I could kill the bacteria on Dacron cuffs in a peritoneal dialysis catheter. I had to say I'd never even seen one. They sent me home with a box of them. We did the study. We got the investment. But then we started looking at the regulatory pathway for peritoneal dialysis. And because more than 90% of the infections come from a portion of the catheter that is outside the body, not touching human tissue, we decided that we were going to switch and make peritoneal dialysis our first product. That's a huge decision. Market isn't as big. Reimbursement is different. It has a whole bunch of different economic situations as opposed to the others. It's in any event, it's a big decision, but we made that, and we made it quickly. We did it with our board, and we did it internally, and everybody understood that there is some risk there, but it's a calculated risk that we made because we want to prove to the world as early as we can that this technology works. So we do it with peritoneal dialysis. The minute we get that clearance, we start once again working on the urinary product.
And Kristin, maybe you can give your perspective about the things I talked about, decision making and, how you are addressing risk. And obviously, as a finance officer, you have a very specific channel.
I do. And it's such a great, being in the finance side for me has been just a great opportunity as we look at our strategy, as we look at, the superpower of startups is the nimbleness, right? We can be very nimble, which is why you need a flexible leadership team with the experience. As we look at these different decision points, really key inflection points, for me, with my background, being able to look at data-driven decisions, right, in a very nimble way. And as Vicki was talking about, we had a path A or a path B, right? And being able to really take that strategy and model it out of what does this mean? What is the risk and what are the alternatives? Because, part of being nimble, fail fast and recover, right? So being able to make sure that we're set up to keep moving along this journey as quickly as possible. And that's where, with the finance background and a deep understanding of operations, being able to really put that in play and use some information and then being able to go with the gut on those. And again, back to the superpower of the startup, I've been in a large public device company and I saw the power, right, of a small company being able to take on these risks and really innovate game-changing technologies. So great to be here, but it is a challenge for us.
No, it's so great to hear both of you together because just the word team is just embedded in this conversation. And for me, one of the messages that I would really like to kind of reiterate for young entrepreneurs is that it's extremely difficult to do this by yourself. You really do need people, who you can trust and you can bounce ideas off of back and forth. And it's an ongoing process. And respecting the leadership that it takes to bring smart, high-powered people together at the same table and to be a listener and then to recognize the importance of each one of those voices is something that I know that Vicki does. It's extremely difficult. And, what we do, we have absolutely one of the best coaches in the country in Jenny Fernandez, who I know is on the call. I hope you're blushing, Jenny. She works with CEO leaders, particularly women, to be able to enhance, their innate strengths. And it's a pleasure to see the progress that your company has made, with this incredible team, because it is challenging times. So I want to shift the conversation a little bit to, now that was kind of the wow of who you are, which is probably a double wow. But now I want to focus a little bit on the innovation itself. So let's dial down a little bit into the technology. How do you emit the light? What type of light is it? What is the frequency, of that light? And, what is the ability, in terms of hard data to look at the different types of organisms that this particular light addresses. Peritoneal dialysis is just filled with problems, and many of those can be life-threatening, but more often than not, they're just debilitating. Everybody who's had an infection knows you slow down, you don't feel well, you can't move, you can't think. But think what happens when you have an infection in your gut, inside your peritoneum. I mean, the impact on your psychological well-being and your physical well-being is astounding. And the financial impact, of course, of all this means nurses and home care, hospital trips. But more than that, there's a platform of infection control. So I'd like you to talk about, first, what's happening right now, the technology behind it, and then we're going to move into a crystal ball, what's going to happen in the future.
Okay. So visible light has been around forever. Okay. It's in the sunlight. Nobel Prize given for it in 1903. We didn't invent visible light. Its efficacy, as I said, has been known forever. What we did invent, and which has been very difficult, and our engineering team is just as good as it could possibly get. What we figured out is how to deliver that light via a fiber optic inside a catheter. The light is only emitted where we etch that fiber optic, so we have complete control over that. So for instance, for peritoneal dialysis, it's going to be in a portion of the catheter called the extension set, which is outside the body. For the Foley endotracheal tubes and vascular catheters, the fiber optic will be emitted throughout the length of the catheter. We're using 405 nanometer light, and the challenge for us was how to emit that light consistently, radially and longitudinally, exactly at the same time, same duration, that will kill all the microbes. So for instance, in peritoneal dialysis, staph epidermidis is very common. You can kill that in 10 minutes, but E. coli and candida take longer. So for peritoneal dialysis, we have what we call a high intensity, short duration light, so that we take as little of the patient's time as possible. We're doing it while they're doing their exchange. For the other indications, it doesn't matter so much. If a person is immunocompromised in a transplant unit, they're not going anywhere. So the light can be on for 8 hours and off for 8 hours. But that's what we've done. And the reason we have these patents is not because visible light is patentable, because it's not. They're all on the method of delivery.
From a finance perspective, Kristin, can you dial down a little bit about the business model and what that looks like for the company? Because a lot of peritoneal dialysis is covered by government insurance, which obviously has its own tremendous headwinds. As someone who's worked for CMS, on the pricing and reimbursement side of healthcare, it is 800-pound gorilla to tackle.
Yeah, great point. And with CMS, they're the primary payer for peritoneal dialysis. They're the ones feeling the pain. They've got the reimbursement, but they also bear the cost of infection. And they're the primary payer. You may start on a private, but ultimately it'll go to CMS, so a little unusual. So a huge spend for CMS. They see the problem. It's not just the providers, but because they're a payer, they intimately see the problem through the dollars they're spending on dialysis, which is one of the reasons they have these initiatives to really get people from the more expensive in-center dialysis to home dialysis. That is cheaper, it's safer. But, as Vicki's talked about, infection is the problem. So to your question of our value proposition and our economics, this is the problem we're solving. Right, is that they have this inability to effectively move and safely move all the people they need to peritoneal dialysis because of infection. So that's their problem. How we come in is we have a razor blade model where we're giving the light engine to the patients, and then they're buying, the provider is paying for the fibers that Vicki talked about going into these catheters that they will replace weekly. So they're doing home dialysis, there's infection all around them. Current treatments are, hand washing, etc. But these are home environments. And as we grow and the number of people using it in the home, this problem only becomes bigger. So the answer through Lightline are these Lightline, the fibers that go into our system. So it's $70 a week or about $10 a day to keep these people who are so compromised away from infection. Back to what the patient is feeling, there's the whole payer problem and the economics there, which are significant. But for the patients themselves, here's a person who finds out they have compromised kidneys. They may be a caregiver for others in the home. They may need to hold a job and go to that. The in-center is not something they want to do, and they want to protect these kidneys.
Right.
So our solution through this, fiber, $10 a day is what will keep them on that safer and more cost-effective solution.
Fantastic. Now, a couple of other questions. Do you currently have any industry strategic partners, or are you looking for strategic partners?
Yeah, so we are looking for strategic partners. We have a distribution agreement for our Foley catheter with Medline Industries, the largest private distributor in North America. We do not have a strategic partner yet for peritoneal dialysis. They're all watching us. They want to wait until we have filed for clearance with FDA. But we are looking for a number of strategic partners. We also have, investment from Mayo Clinic, Merit Medical. So we have attracted 3 strategics.
One of the things that I would like to do is recognize some of the investment leadership that has recognized the power of your company in Keiretsu Forum. Real leaders, extremely meticulous. That whole organization, hats off to recognizing the power of your platform. And so I want to take the last couple of minutes to talk about the platform. Like, where do you see this going in 5-10 years in terms of standard of care, impact on patients, and potential other verticals?
Okay, so we expect our technology to be used worldwide, beginning first in the United States with all 4 of fields of use, which includes dialysis, urinary, respiratory, and vascular. The ultimate vision for the company is one, what we call it a light engine, the box that delivers the light, that instead of just having one light engine for one indication, like for peritoneal dialysis, it would be in every emergency room, every transplant center, everything. One light engine with 4 or 5 tubes out of it that are delivering the light, so that one engine could provide both the Foley catheter, disinfectant, and respiratory, and et cetera. So that's the vision worldwide. And I believe we'll get there. And as Kristin mentioned, it's not just hospitals, it's also homes, it's nursing homes, it's literally everywhere.
Right. And then from a finance perspective, Kristin, what do you need in terms of capital over the next several years? How much money are we talking about to scale?
Yeah, so we're currently wrapping up our Series A. So we've got about $1 million left available on the Series A without adding in our commitments on that. That gets us through our FDA filing for this first product, the PD, or the peritoneal dialysis product. We will then be looking at a Series B after that, and say 15 plus million roughly. And what that will do is that will support the go-to-market for this first product of the peritoneal dialysis, the infection control catheter with that. And then it will also support our filing for our second product, which I think Vicki talked about the pivot we made. This was the one we started, which is one of the largest problems on the urinary infection. That will be next. At that point, we'll be revenue funded as we roll out the next platforms.
Fantastic. First, I want to just take a moment to really thank everyone in the audience. And I just want to, as I always do, acknowledge people who have dialed in from all over the world. So thank you, Martin from Norway. Thank you, Salim from Oman. Michael, thank you for dialing in. Abraham, George from Texas, Jose from Spain, Alua from Nigeria, Abraham again from Nigeria, looking through here. Niels, welcome. Mustafa, welcome. I believe Mustafa is from Turkey. And of course, Jenny Fernandez, who is always on every webinar. I just can't thank you all enough. If you have any questions, please feel free to email them, put your email in. And for those people that are dialing in, it's great to be able to put where you're dialing in from, because we do want this to be an international webinar to be able to bring information to entrepreneurs all over the world. And Vicki and Kristin, I can't thank you enough for bringing, such really kind of pertinent and personal, healthcare information to the audience. One of the things that's embedded in what we do here is the recognition that we're all going to be patients at some point in our lives. And I can tell you, as a physician, once you become a patient, you see the world completely differently. So, what you're doing, I think, is the tip of the spear in terms of what I see for the next generation of healthcare advances, using technology, taking risks, and working in a team spirit. So thank you so much for coming on the Endeavor Better Health webinar today.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Endeavor and BetterHealth and everybody who joined. And if anybody has any input for us to advance our company and Endeavor's mission, please reach out.
Well said. And thank you, Kristin, as well, for all of your insights into the financial side. So important that CEOs, CFOs, CSOs work seamlessly. And I think really embedded in our conversation is the notion that there is both big picture decision-making, quick action, pivots, adjustments, and acceleration out of that, on an operational level. So thank you, Kristin, for taking part and sharing those insights.
Well, thank you. And it's great to be so well aligned. We are so passionate at Lightline about using our innovation to reduce patient suffering and also to increase, equality and diversity in what we provide. So thank you for this platform. It's been wonderful.
Goodbye, everybody. Kristin and Vicki, stay on for a couple of minutes. I look forward to seeing everyone next week. On Tuesday, we're going to present really an incredible company that's looking at a critical issue, which is longevity. So please come to our event next Tuesday at 12 o'clock. I am certain you're going to be wowed by the CEO as he is presenting something really unique. Take care. Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody.